Hello, this tutorial is a part 2 of the last one, which is how to create a metaspace or a metaverse. So what's the difference between a metaverse and a metaspace? First off, metaspace is essentially one 3D environment space that you can share with other people. It's a virtual space. Technically, it doesn't have to be 3D, it could technically be 2D. However, but a metaverse is essentially how I would describe it is the collection of multiple metaspaces that connect and link together. So that's how, at least at Reach, that's how we would define what a metaverse versus Reach or versus a metaspace. Yeah, just to be a little more technical. Now let's get into adding more things to this particular metaspace. So first off, I want to make this a little bit bigger. I can scale it. So I can just simply enter it numerically, 10 meters by 10 meters. And now when I actually play, I can see that my space is a lot bigger now. I'm going to go ahead and unplay and get back to my editing mode. What I'm going to include today is I'm going to include boxes and some interactions. And I'm also going to show you quickly on how to create different materials. But there are vast amount of tutorials out there on how to make anything in Unity. So I would refer you to do that instead. These tutorials will be mainly what Reach SDK can do, and also how you can create Metaspace and Metaverse using Reach Cloud Metaverse Engine. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go to on the hierarchy empty field, right click, 3D object. I'm gonna go ahead and create a cube, and as you can see, it's very hard to distinguish between the floor and the cube. However, if I hit play, I can actually see it because it's, you know, in 3-dimensional space. I can navigate around it. I can look and notice that I bump into it and I can't walk anymore because it has what's called a collision or a box collider. So, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make this particular cube interactable. And in order to do that, what I can do is I can actually have the cube selected, and in the inspector panel I can add component, and I'm going to look for interactable, and it's actually called Metaverse Interactable. Once I add that object, this object is now interactable in pretty much all platform. So if I make my Metaspace available on VR, I can actually grab this 1 cubic meter cube and essentially move it around. And if I have another person join in my Metaspace, he can also steal it from my hand, or he can interact with it as well. But as you can see, it defines the law of gravity. So that's what I'm going to do next. I am going to make this particular cube something that is more realistic. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure the cube game object is selected. And on the inspector panel, I'm going to add component again. But this time, I'm going to look for kinematics. Actually, no. Rigid body, I'm sorry. I'm going to look for rigid body. And the moment I put or insert the component rigid body, I have these options of what the mass of this object will be, what is the drag, essentially air resistance, that the game engine will simulate the air resistance of this. It doesn't, Unity doesn't really have the aerodynamic simulation yet. So in order to compensate that, you can actually have drag, and that essentially uniformly kind of applies to the whole thing. But in this case, I'm just gonna leave it at 0, angular drag, the same way, kind of self-explanatory. And then this box right here will determine whether this cube will be affected by gravity or not. If I leave it unchecked, it will float. But in this case, I'm going to check it. And kinematic, what this means is if I have this box checked, it will not move, or the physics simulator will not apply to this object. So at this particular example, I'm going to leave it unchecked. And the rest, I'll leave that for Unity explanation, for if you want to dig deeper into how Unity works. Again, there's plenty of tutorials online discussing that topic. So now, as you can see, my box actually has physics and it can be pushed around. I can still pick it up, but now it has physics simulation. So there it is. All right, next I want to make this cube a little more distinguishable from the floor. So what I'll do is I'm going to come to my project panel, and I'm going to right click on the asset folder, go to create, and I'm going to look for folder, essentially creating a folder. What I like to do is, if I'm creating my own folder, I like to have an underscore in front so that my folders goes on top. I'm going to name my folder materials because I'm going to create a material. I'm going to right click on the empty field, again, create, and I'm going to look for material. Here it is. I'm going to call this gray. And I'm going to drag and drop gray to this box, but nothing happens yet because I haven't changed any properties. In this particular case, I'm just gonna change the color or the albedo, and here we have it, how I distinguish the cube from the floor. And now I can see it much better. Here it is. All right, I'm going to show you a best practice of how to organize your scene. Simply use Unity empty game object. So again, how I did that was on the hierarchy panel, right click, create empty. I'm going to name this scene, and I'm going to make sure that the position and rotation and scale is at 0, which is transform is at 0. And I'm going to use this empty game object as a folder, and I'm going to drag in or create more cubes, and I'm going to call this wall. And what I can do with this wall is I can select it, move it around. I can also press the T key, and now I can drag to transform like so. I can also press the R key to use the scaling handle. I can also use the E key to rotate it around. And now I can build my stage. So I'm going to make a really simple stage. I'm going to make the ground gray just by dragging my material to the ground. And I'm going to keep this thing as default color, which is white. And I'm going to create more walls. What I can do is I can quickly duplicate any game object in Unity by having it selected, and on the keyboard I hit Control D. Now I duplicated the wall game object, and I can manipulate it like so. Another thing I want to point out is right here in the scene window, you have these little drop down box that I can change, I can change it to local. What this does is now the transform is going to only care about itself, what is oriented according to its own reference. But if I hit global, it's going to this triad or the transform that is referencing, it's going to be referencing the world space. So you can switch back and forth between just so that you can manipulate objects accordingly. And you can also use Pro Builder to quickly create your scene using Polygon. It's a more advanced way to do things, really, but we're not going to cover in this tutorial. Maybe in a different tutorial, but you can also find a vast majority or a vast amount of videos on how to use Pro Builder as well. Anyway, back to this. I'm just going to go ahead and do it really, really fast and just kind of give you an idea what you can do. I can make really, really big things. So in a really small period of time, I can create essentially a world, and I can test it. I can walk around by left shift. We'll toggle between walking and running. So as you can see here, I can go around in my scene and I have my own world. More interactable things and more tutorial on how different components will come later, and this is just a really basic tutorial that I just want to get you guys started. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and get more of these, and I'm going to make the small ones. By the way, I can hold control or shift to multiple select, and when they're highlighted in blue, meaning both of them are selected, and if they share common properties or components in the inspector, I can actually edit both properties on multiple objects at one time. So for this instance, I will make sure that these two are not using gravity. So, and I'm going to go to global and bring it back down a little bit so I can reach it, and then I can show you what it looks like without gravity. And this is a very, very simple metaspace, and you can go as fancy as you like. And there you go. You can see how it just flies like you're in outer space. All right, now what's left is go to your Metaspace and upload it to WebGL. But in this case, I'm going to include standalone windows as well, because I'm going to show you how to link this into your LAN plot if you own a LAN in Eden, in Reach Metaverse. Let's go ahead and build and upload and go from there. All right, now that it is finished, I'm going to go back to the Reach Explorer, app.reachcloud.org, and I'm going to go back to my world, which I named my first world. I'm going to join that. Here it is. Everything as it was. So I can kick it around, move this around, and here we go. And if I want to share this with my friends, I simply press escape, and you see this big triangle. Drop it down. You see some options Might as well just use this opportunity to go over this. This is just simply mute, unmute yourself. And I can also go to adjust the quality setting of my graphics. I can adjust the sound and select my input system where the sound is coming from. I can also adjust the volume of the game sound and the voice in case sometimes the sound effect or the background music is too loud. You can adjust. This is respawn, and this is share. So once you hit that button, it will copy, and then I simply just paste this anywhere. For example, I can go to Discord community, and you probably, Mike, I'll give you a shout out because I'm making this video because you reminded me to, and here you go. And if I hit this, or if anybody click this on this link, it will automatically go to that Metaspace. But since I'm logged in, Reach will not allow the same user to log into the same instance. So it would join in another instance. But I can simply log myself out. So I'm going to show you what it looks like if I were to log myself out. Right here, it logged me in because on the other instance I logged myself out. Anyway, this is getting to the weeds a little bit. I'm going to get back to the point. If I log out, might as well talk about this, and I refresh. One thing you'll notice that you will not see that world that I made anymore because I'm not logged in. If I'm logged in, I will be able to see the worlds that are private to me. So that goes back to what I was doing here. If I were to go back to my Metaspace game object, and on the metadata section, if I expand that, I will see that private is checked. If I were to uncheck this private check mark and hit update Metaspace or update metadata, what that will do is it's going to tell the server that this particular world ID is no longer going to be private. So anybody now can join or see. Now if I refresh, I see there my first world. And the beautiful thing about Reach Cloud is, as you can see there, the thumbnail, I didn't have to do anything to create this thumbnail. It did that automatically. You might be wondering how that happened. Well, it's from this main camera. Whatever this main camera sees, it's going to basically take that snapshot and make it a thumbnail. However, you can create your own thumbnail just simply by adding one here, but you have to import it into your project as a 2D texture image. But usually I just used the main camera and point it where it looks pretty, and then that would be my thumbnail. Alright, now that I did that, I can also update the metadata, and it would actually, should anyway, update my thumbnail as well. There it is. So you can see how fast that applies. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and hit join as anonymous, which is I'm basically not logged in. And then on this instance, I will see that multiplayer works right off the bat. Whenever this side of the thing joins. Okay, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and leave that world and rejoin because I think I'm kicked into a different ID. So if I can find, and by the way, another thing that you can do is you can filter with most recent or recently updated, and then it's going to do that, or it's going to sort that accordingly after the ones that are being starred. The ones that are being starred are the ones that always going to be on the top, and that's internal Reach. Basically, Solomon is the one who would put the star on the world that we want to highlight. Anyway, now that I'm joining, I can see that everything works. So the metaverse is ready, and you can create a metaverse that is completely linked using the Reach Metaverse. But as you can see, there's some issue here, and you could probably see on my left hand side of the screen, the box is not really doing what it's doing, and that leads to our first troubleshoot of the session here. So if I go back to my first project and go on all these metaverse interactable objects, the reason why it's not linked is because it requires what's called a network object. So that brings to the next topic, which is basically all you have to do is go to your component and look for network object. Now this object has the network object in it. That means it tells the Reach server that, hey, this right here needs to be synced. So it's going to check its precision and or whatever you want to sync. In this case, I want to sync the transform. So not only that I have the network object, I also would look for network transform. Transform is essentially this: is where is it, precision, what is rotation, and how big is it. So basically that's what transforms are. So I'm going to go ahead and hit network transform. For the synchronization option, I'm going to sync only the precision and rotation. All right, I'm going to do the same for these guys. So I'm going to click or hold control and click and add network transform and also network object. All right, so we got network object. Okay, actually that wasn't a good idea because I add network transform before, and now it's looking for the network object. So the best practice is to add network object first, then add the network transform. All right, hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but there we go. So now the network, if I click on it individually, it knows what that is. And I just have to make sure that the synchronization option is precision and rotation. All right, that's it. Since I changed the meat of the content inside the Metaspace or inside my scene, what I need to do is I need to build and upload, because Metaspace or metadata only has to do with thumbnails, with the name and descriptions and anything that's under this metadata options. And of course, VR optional, AR option things are also a part of the metadata that can quickly be updated. We'll get more into this in a later, more advanced video, but let's go ahead and build and upload and see our change accordingly. All right, now that it's done, I'm going to go ahead and go back here. And the change won't apply until I rejoin. So I'm going to go ahead and exit on both. And then I'm going to look for that again by changing my filter to regionally updated. Join that. And I can also share this by copy and pasting the URL, and it will go to the same place. There it is. And now if I were to look at my the other, you can see that the object actually syncs rotation and position. So there you have it. Interactable metaverse work cross-platform in Reach. So now I'm going to discuss how we can actually link this metaspace to the plot ID. And in that, I will have to actually go back to my scene and make sure I have it on standalone windows, because at the moment the land plots in Eden are only available on standalone PC due to the limitations of the WebGL. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now, and then I'm going to launch Reach Metaverse through itch.io. Go to launch this. Here I am on Reach PC. I'm going to minimize this, make it smaller, and I'm going to launch that my first world in Reach PC and just kind of check it out a little bit. You can see everything is pretty much the same, except the performance is much better on Reach Explorer PC. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to go to my land plot, and I'm going to place a portal. So if I want to do that, I'm going to go into my inventory, and I'm going to launch into one of my land plots and activate the build mode. Here I am in my land plot. Is loading. My internet is not the best at the moment, so everything comes in very slowly, but this is the portal. I'm going to go ahead and enter the build mode and basically delete this for now, so I can show you from scratch how I would do it. So on the buildable object, I can go to the Metaverse portal, click on it, and here it is. I can rotate it however I want. Here it is, and from there I can actually enter a Metaspace ID, spawn ID, and so on. But and then there's unlisted and private. This is pretty much the same option as you see in your Metaspace over here. Unlisted and private. And then what is unlisted? Unlisted essentially means unlisted, meaning like you won't be able to see it from the main menu. Private means only you can see it, just like in YouTube video, essentially. So that's what that is. And then Metaspace ID is required for the portal to work. So, but I simply can't just paste the whole thing from, you know, the Metaspace ID that I had from the menu. For instance, if I were to open this Reach Explorer up in the app and say I want this portal to go to District 1, I technically can just click this button. It will copy, go back to Reach Explorer, and then simply replace this with that. Control V. If I do that, it will not work because the ID does not contain the HTTPS/ and so on and so forth. So all I have to do is just delete this part all the way to the equal sign, and that it's all I need to have my Metaspace ID. So now if I want to make this to go to my land plot or to my Metaspace that I just created, that's basically what I have to do. But in this case, I have it linked to District 1. So if I want it to go to my first Metaspace, here we go, not most popular, recently updated, here we go. And locate that, here it is. I'm going to go ahead and click that link button. It's copy. Alright, I'm going to go back to my plot, inventory, my land plot, spawning. There's that portal. I'm going to go ahead and enter the build mode whenever it's done loading. Here it is. Alright, now I'm going to simply paste, since I already copied it. Delete that, paste that, and then find the equal sign and delete everything before that. Done. Alright, now when I walk through my portal, it should go to my world that I just created. Here it is. And now I actually can link this to my portal. So my portal is essentially a front page for anyone to come to my own Metaspace. And in the Metaspace, you can also create your own portal as well. And we'll cover that in the later video on how to make multiple Metaspaces to create your own metaverse within Reach. Thanks for watching. Until next time. This is quite a long video, but yeah, we covered a lot. All right, take care.